Working on my cardio, it's perfect with this audio. You better call an audible. Celebrate this victory win, it's so applaudable. I don't need the audience here, cause this is all I know. Crossover, fade away, we living in a great time. Better get your weight up or get ate up at the baseline. This'll be the jump off. Started with a jump ball. Throw the alley-oop off to my crew, now that's a dunk ball. 2 points and 1, you about to foul out. Free throw all net, everybody wild out. I can let my game talk, you were just a loudmouth. We can get the ring with the whole team and then the crowd shout.
Hello again, Irish fans, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball with Mike Bray. I'm Jack Nolan, joined as always by the head coach of the Fighting Irish. And Coach, your guys picked up a much-needed win at home over Boston College to start the week. A classic example of Bray ball. 5 guys scored in double figures, and your team did not turn the ball over until 9 minutes into the second half.
Well, Jack, we needed a win bad, and I thought our practice habits on Thursday and Friday leading up to the game was a real difference maker. But you're right, our offensive efficiency was there. We shared the ball, 21 assists, only 7 turnovers, but our defensive consistency was better. The field goal percentage defense was down around 42 instead of up around 47 or 48. And we're not going to beat anybody if we can't keep that field goal percentage defense down closer to 40.
Unfortunately, that was the only game your team got to play this past week after the Howard game was postponed until next season, leaving you with an 8-day break between games, a break you tried to fill. You worked really hard. You had a couple of teams on the line, but you just couldn't make it happen. Yeah,
in this pandemic scheduling model, we tried and get another game because when you play well, like we did Saturday, you want to play again. We just couldn't get anybody to on the schedule, so it makes for a week of practice. I think you have to scrimmage some, which we will do and have done to kind of break up the week. And it was disappointing we couldn't play the Howard game. It was a lot of symbolism and education around it, but for us, it would have been a chance to win 2 games in 3 days and put a 2-game win streak together, which for a group that's trying to find itself and kind of find some momentum, I thought that was a really important part of it that we certainly weren't able to pull off.
When we come back, we will break down Notre Dame's victory over Boston College. You're watching Inside Notre Dame Basketball, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. It's time now for our game breakdown, brought to you by our friends at Meyer. You worked your guys very hard in practice after the 2-game Virginia road trip with a goal of raising their intensity and energy levels, and that certainly seemed to pay dividends against Boston College. BC led for about a minute and a half early in the game and never led again.
Jack, I thought we had to kind of send a message. Maybe at times coming out of Virginia, we felt a little sorry for ourselves. Well, nobody's going to feel sorry for you. We got to grow up and own it. And we were not good enough on the defensive end, and we did not compete hard enough to get loose balls. And so we need to do that on Thursday and Friday. And I thought it did pay off in our game against Boston College.
Juwan Durham tied the game at 4 and a nice feed from Prentice Hub. And Coach Juwan seemed to benefit from those 2 intense practices before the BC game. After missing the shoot-around with back spasms, he turned in a terrific performance, recording his first double-double of the season and 4th of his career with 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocked shots.
Well, I love the rebounding stat. That's something we could really use more from him. And I've challenged him continually. You're going to play long enough minutes. I think you should be close to 8 or 9, 10 rebounds a game. So hopefully we've broken the ice on that front. But a lot of respect for Juwan and how he's felt to lead a little bit with this group now as a 5th-year senior, and he's a captain. And he knows his teammates really need him, even though some days his body doesn't feel great. He's learning how to fight through that and still compete.
And speaking of fighting through, Nate Laszewski is dealing with being opponents' main defensive focus right now, but it didn't bother him in the first half of this game. He gave you the lead at 7-4 with a 3, and that started a string of 8 straight points by Nate to really give you some momentum, and it could have been a one-man 10-point run if he hadn't missed a couple of free throws.
What I appreciate about Nate is now that people are really leaning toward him defensively because of the unbelievable start that he had. He doesn't force things. He still lets the game come to him. He is our most unselfish defender and helps and talks and rotates, certainly rebounds the ball. And he's found a way now, because they're taking away him at the three-point line a lot of times, driving and getting fouled. Now we got to work on those free throws, knocking them down, because I know Nate can be an 80% free throw shooter when all's said and done.
Now you took the lead for good at 15-12 when Nick Jojo grabbed the rebound and raced down the floor before finding Trey Wertz for a transition three.
Well, the one thing about Nick Jojo from day one has been he has been solid, he has been steady, he knows who he is, and that was a heck of a play to kind of jumpstart us.
Trey is known as a scorer, but he does an awful lot of things for you. He only scored 5 points in this game, but he had 3 rebounds and 3 assists in 29 minutes.
Yeah, the one thing about him, he takes a little pressure off of Prentice Hub. He is a playmaking guard. He's good off the dribble. You could even say he's kind of a point guard who can also score it. But he loves making plays for people. He's a great passer. He's a really intelligent player. Like Hub, I really challenged he and Prentice the Thursday, Friday leading up. I just thought they could be better defenders than they've shown, to sit down and be more athletic defenders. They were, but it's something we still have to stay on them about.
We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. BC shot the ball very well in their win last season at Purcell, which I know you remember well. And they had made 18 threes in their previous game against Miami. But when you took a 21-12 lead midway through the first half, part of the reason was your defense, which had limited BC to 3 for 14 shooting at that point.
Well, we were worried about defending them outside the arc, especially coming off a game against Miami where they made 18. And so we were more aware of really getting out and chasing out. And I thought our guards and our big guys on screens, if we had to switch out on their shooters, we were very alert. We were more aware than we were through the whole state of Virginia, quite frankly. We were more aware, and we're going to have to stay after that, Jack.
Now, BC did rally. They cut your lead to 21-19, and that's when Juwan Durham hit a turnaround jumper from about 18 feet away at the shot clock buzzer. What were your thoughts when he knocked that shot down?
Well, we kind of have a set when it's low clock, side out of bounds, and really it was a two-man play. Dane Goodwin, taking the ball out of bounds, did a great job of waiting till Juwan was open. You know, Juwan was contested at first, and then he got positioned again. Dane fired it in there. And, you know, Juwan has a great stroke facing the bucket. We've seen it. He can make free throws. He can make a 15, 18-footer. Every now and then he can make a three-point shot. But I just thought the two of them understood the game situation. And that was a big bucket because, you know, BC had some momentum there in the first half.
And it took a while for you guys to take that momentum away. They did cut the lead to 1 with 5:24 left in the half, but that's when your guys took control with a 12-2 run, and you hit the locker room at halftime with a 10-point lead.
Yeah, I thought we finished the half well. We were able to get out in transition and get some easy buckets. You know, it's funny when you get stops defensively, it's a license to let you go run and play 5-on-4 or 4-on-3. We're really good in those situations, but we have not given ourselves enough of them because our defense has let us down at times.
Now, you and I have often talked about the importance of the opening minutes of the second half of any game. And this one, you certainly wanted to maintain your lead. You actually quickly expanded it to 14, thanks in part to Prentice Hub, who hit back-to-back threes early. He ended up with his third career double-double with 13 points, 10 assists, and 3 steals.
Well, you're right, Jack. How you finish a half, how you start a half can really dictate who wins the game many times. And for Prentice Hub, though, certainly his offensive numbers and how he ran the team and took good shots. But I thought better defensively, more engaged defensively. And my goal has been to get him to understand, don't sell yourself short as a defender. You're a more athletic defender than you are giving us. And I would include Trey Wertz in that. Between the two of them, I've stayed after them about defending better. But certainly how you end a half and how you start a half can really set a tone.
Now, also helping you put this game away was Dane Goodwin, who scored 14 at his game-high 21 points in the second half. He made 8 of his 14 shots in the game, including 5 of 9 from three-point land.
Well, every time BC thought maybe they had a run in him, it was a Dane Goodwin bucket that really, really helped us. And he had that look, he had that focus. And it's my goal and his goal and my objective and his objective to keep that focus and edge about him every game, not 3 out of 4.
And he delivered the dagger in this one, back-to-back threes, 8 minutes into the second half. That gave you a 17-point lead, your largest of the game. Now, through your first 7 games, an argument can be made that Dane was your most consistent player. He had been inconsistent in the 4 games before BC, but this was a classic Dane Goodwin performance.
Yeah, again, I fully expected him to kind of explode after having a tough 2 previous games. But watching him in practice that Thursday and Friday and how he responded to the atmosphere we created, I fully expected him to really come out, and he did.
Coach will take control of the video on this week's edition of Irish Intel right after this short timeout. It's time now for this week's edition of Irish Intel. This is where we give control of the video to Coach Gray as we break down some of the best plays from the previous week of action. Coach, our first play this week involves Nick Jojo following to a T your practice mantra of rebound and run for an easy basket.
Well, as I said all year, I thought Nick has played his role fabulously, and he can rebound the ball. But this is just a heck of a play. When you get a stop, you can run. Look at Cormac Ryan running and stretching the defense. But Nick does a great job of finding a spotting up Trey Wirtz. And when you can get easy baskets in transition, man, does it take some pressure off your half-court offense.
Mike, sometimes when you play both 6'10" Nate Laszewski and 6'11" Juwan Durham together, spacing on offense can be a problem, but it has not been an issue in recent weeks. And this play from early in the second half of the BC game is a great example of how they are learning to play together effectively around the paint.
Well, you're right, Jack, and I think they love playing together, both Juwan and Nate. But one thing we feel is good is, throwing it into the low post. We like throwing it down here to Juwan. And one of the reasons is he's a great passer from there. And here's just a great example of unselfishness and Nate knowing when to cut to get an easy bucket. Again, a low post touch for Juwan Durham is good, not necessarily for him to score, but to kind of flatten the defense. And then he has been very unselfish, not only finding Nate, but finding shooters outside the arc when he kicks it out. I've been really pleased with how Juwan passes the basketball. He's really kind of a low post playmaker for us from down there, and love the decisions he's made.
Mike, our final Irish Intel play this week involves Prentice Hub coming up with a key deflection at the top of the 2-3 zone, and that leads to a transition 3 by Dane Goodwin that gives you a 17-point lead 8 minutes into the second half of the Boston College game.
Jack, it's funny, when you're more active defensively, you get more deflections. And one of the things we addressed in practice Thursday and Friday was being active defensively and having a better stance. And Prentice, his stance is good, his hands are active, we get a deflection right there, and then we're kind of off to the races. Again, being able to play in transition, and I love our decision-making in transition. Just a really good, easy play here. Dane runs and stretches the floor and pulls up aggressively in transition. But it all started with activity, a good stance on the defensive end. It pays off, but you got to do it on top of each other. One possession, two, but you can't go every other possession against ACC competition.
We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. Tire Rack also presents our weekly player interview, and joining us now is Irish junior guard Dane Goodwin. Dane has moved into a starting role this season after being one of the best 6 men in the ACC last year. Dane has responded to his starting role with the best season of his career. He is third on the team in scoring and rebounding at 13.3 points and 4.7 rebounds per game, and is also third on the team in steals with 8. Dane is coming off one of his best games of the season. He led the Irish in scoring in Notre Dame's win over Boston College with 21 points after hitting 8 of his 14 shots in the game, including 5 of 9 from three-point land. Dane, welcome to the Mike Brey Show. What do you think are the biggest improvements you have made to your game this season?
Yeah, like Coach said, just touching up on every aspect of my game. I think paying more attention to the defensive end has helped me and getting more engaged, and I think that's carried over to the offensive end, and just being more aggressive this year, even more than last year's, been great for me.
Yeah, Dane, I think there's no question we were teasing with you. I know through the preseason, be a guard and be a, and one of the things you've always had the knack for rebounding, and where does that come from? You had to be a great rebounder in high school as well. I know you were with your AAU team.
Yeah, I think they came, definitely from my high school years, and kind of having to be the bigger guard that played almost a big, get my nose in there and go get rebounds a lot, and I think that's translated to the college level a little bit. I still think I need to do a better job sometimes in that area, and getting down and dirty a little bit, and going and get those rebounds.
Mike, your television show, Inside Notre Dame Basketball, runs on Sports Time Ohio, and of all our affiliates, they run it more than anybody, 6-7 times a week. So maybe it's because of Dane's presence there. And not only did you get to play against a team coached by your dad last year, you played against Ohio State this year, played well, scored 16 points. I think if you had one more guy, you were shorthanded that night, you would have won the game. What was that like? Yeah,
that was definitely also a little weird. I actually know about, pretty much all the coaches and, a good number of the guys I still have a relationship with. So it was definitely a little bit weird, but, I'm here and it's playing for Notre Dame, not Ohio State. So at the end of the day, it was a cool experience, but, ultimately we didn't get it done that night, but, it was pretty cool.
Jack, Dane is in our Mendoza Business School, which is amazingly challenging. Dane, talk a little bit about the rigors of Mendoza.
Yeah, at times Mendoza can kind of beat up on you a little bit. It's kind of just weathering the storm sometimes, and I think all the guys in my class have realized that. But at the end of the day, we've figured it out a little bit. We've got through it. Hopefully we can continue that to the next 3 semesters. Whatever it is.
Dane, outstanding job as always. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us today.
Thanks, Dane. See you at compete drill at practice later.
That's good.
We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. Mike, quite a transition for your team this week as you go from 8 days between games to 3 games in 7 days, beginning with a Sunday night game at Miami.
Well, we've got our hands full because, Miami has beaten Purdue and Louisville in that building. They've won at NC State. So a great challenge for us. What's our intensity defending? What's our intensity rebounding the basketball against the athletic ability of Miami? I do like the fact that we have a bunch of games on the schedule. I sure hope we can play them. And I know we're all living day to day because we need to play. And that's what was frustrating about after Boston College. You play well and you want to play again, and we had to wait 8 days.
Then it is back home to take on really the surprise team in the ACC this year, a Virginia Tech team that, as we speak, is 5-1 on the season. And one of those wins, a win over you guys in Blacksburg. Well,
they're playing really well. And we were up 7 at half. And they came out in the second half and just smothered us defensively. And we're going to have some answers for that. And then rebounded second shots over us to beat us. So I know our guys would like another shot at them, and we need to play closer to 40 minutes instead of 20.
Folks, that will do it for this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball with Mike Brey. Coach and I will return next week to break down all the highlights of the Miami and Virginia Tech games and preview Notre Dame's 3rd game in 7 days at Pittsburgh. Until then, for Coach Brey, I'm Jack Nolan. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, and as always, go Irish.